Is pandemic over for LGBTQ community as Queer News Tonight ends 25 months of daily COVID reporting? Today is Tuesday, and if you have followed our broadcast for a while, you know that for over 2 years, we have reported updated coronavirus information every Tuesday. During that time, we have remained the only LGBTQ plus media outlet to translate the COVID-19 numbers into how many members of our community were included. We were also one of the first LGBTQ plus media outlets to report on the virus back in January of 2020. Watch this.
That's right. This is the coronavirus. There have been 18 reported dead and over 600 infected in just the past few days. This is spread across the world and across Asia, obviously, in the correspondence that we have seen from this video. This is the Wuhan in China. 11 million people have been in lockdown in that city, and the Chinese New Year has actually been canceled in Beijing because of this virus. As we have reported, the World Health Organization has been convening today to determine if this is actually a public crisis or what needs to happen moving forward. We hope that this is not going to be an epidemic, and we will stay tuned to see what happens from their understanding of how this is going to be spread and how many people might be able to contract it.
On March 11th, 2020, the World Health Organization declared a world health emergency. Little did we know how quickly the virus would spread and begin to hit close to home. We continued to discuss COVID-19 on both Queer News Tonight and It's Happening Out. On March 18th of 2020, Republican commentator Ron Brenesky was discussing how the new concepts of social distancing and virtual meetings were bringing his family together. Watch this.
And we're actually, yesterday, my husband and I decided to have dinner with our cousins in Italy, and we were sat down and said, it was, 3 o'clock in the morning, it was midnight here, whatever time it was, and we were having fun, and we were having drinking, and it hit me. Damn, we have an opportunity to reach out to each other. I loved your video that you put on today, made me laugh, and this is good opportunity for us to go ahead and just exchange it. And you know what? Again, sounds corny for many people, but darn it, say I love you. It ain't gonna kill you. You got the coronavirus to do that, but go ahead and tell somebody you love.
Ron tested positive for COVID-19 soon after that show. Host Chef Josie also tested positive for the virus. On April 8th, 2020, we began our segment we called Quarantine Quickies. Initially, we only reported on the total number of Americans who had become infected or passed away from the virus. We had not yet begun to calculate the number of LGBTQ plus individuals impacted by COVID-19. Watch this.
During the COVID-19 crisis, Q News Tonight will bring you the day's bullet points on coronavirus. The most important news of the day that we call our segment Quarantine Quickies. Here are the headlines in Quarantine Quickies for Wednesday, April 8th, 2020. For April 8th, we report COVID-19 has the highest one-day USA death toll at nearly 1,900. The Surgeon General continues to advise America and the LGBT community that this is likely going to be one of the most difficult weeks of our lives. Today, April 8th, there are more than 430,000 COVID-19 cases in the United States, and in the last 24 hours, America has had the highest single one-day death toll of the crisis with 1,858 deaths.
Well, in response, we presented a special Q&A on March 19th featuring Mayor of Fort Lauderdale, Dean Trentelis, Dr. Beau Chatal Sharma, and Dr. Stephen A. Renee. We continued the weekly Q&A every single week after the local doctor who had tested the cast and crew of our network. Dr. Howard Grossman is one of the most respected names in infectious disease, having been the executive director of the American Academy of HIV Medicine and having worked directly with Dr. Anthony Fauci at the height of the HIV/AIDS pandemic. He became our expert health anchor during the pandemic segments. Watch this.
This special segment tonight on Q News Tonight is designed to be a unique America to answer your question about coronavirus for the LGBT community during the pandemic itself. Tonight, we have an American pioneer in AIDS, HIV medical treatment. With us tonight is Dr. Howard Grossman, specialist in internal medicine with an emphasis on HIV. Where would you like to start in terms of the week in COVID-19? What's gone on this week?
First, I want to say thank you for inviting me back to this really important news show, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about the science and answer viewers' questions.
Little did we know how prophetic Ron's words on his episode of It's Happening Out would be. That Friday, he would be admitted to the hospital with breathing problems. By the weekend, he would be put into an induced coma. Due to pandemic visitation restrictions, his husband was never able to visit him in the hospital. A month later, on April 27th, 2020, we lost our friend Ron Brenesky.
And it's 7 p.m. Monday, April 27th, 2020. We have very difficult news to begin our broadcast of Q News tonight. With more than 1 million infections now of COVID-19 virus and approaching 58,000 deaths, coronavirus again hits Happening Out television network. We are very sad to report that our It's Happening Out host, Ron Brenesky, has passed away this morning from coronavirus. This morning, after more than a month-long battle with coronavirus, Ron passed. He has been in ICU at Miami Palmetto Hospital here in South Florida on a respirator and a medically induced coma for most of his hospitalization.
We continued to report on pandemic numbers, and in a unique feature to our show, we calculated exactly how many members of the LGBTQ+ community were affected. As the pandemic winds down and government officials begin to block those numbers from being published, we offer our final quarantine quickies of the pandemic. We will continue to report on any major stories regarding the pandemic.
For the final time, we report that as of today, more than 5,730,000 LGBTQ+ Americans have contracted COVID-19. Almost 82 million total Americans have contracted the virus.
We remember the over 1 million Americans and especially the estimated 70,000 LGBTQ+ Americans who have passed away due to the virus, including Happening Out television network host Ron Brenesky.
Medical science has saved many, many more lives, however. Despite the political debates about the virus, more than 562 million doses of coronavirus vaccines have been administered here in the U.S.
As life begins to return to normal, we remind everyone that we at Queer News Tonight and the Happening Out television network will continue to provide you with any news about this or other future issues that may affect the global LGBTQ+ community.
Our community has faced pandemics before. We lived through HIV and AIDS. We lived through coronavirus. We will forever carry the scars that these diseases have given us. We will remember those who have lost, and we will not remain silent as the new threats arrive. Well, I have to tell you, having gone through this, this is the saddest moment of my time in South Florida and the proudest moment of our time in South Florida. We were right at the beginning of the World Health Organization's announcement of the strange virus that was appearing in Wuhan, and coincidentally, Queer News Tonight launched the same week that the World Health Organization made that announcement. We talked about the first cases in the third or fourth week in January of 2020, and every single day we were reporting on coronavirus. We could not have imagined in what we were watching, even with the chorus breakout of pandemic of COVID-19 here in South Florida, the winter party in South Beach, that we would be sitting here on a Wednesday night of a live episode of It's Happening Out with Ron that you just saw. After that Wednesday night show, Josie and I and Napoleon and others went to Johnson's, because we were broadcasting from the World's AIDS Museum, and went to Johnson's. Probably not the smartest thing that we could do. And on 2 days later, Ron was admitted to the hospital. We had emergency testing, which was impossible. That Friday in March, testing for COVID was literally impossible. And we were able to, because we were a news outlet, we were able to arrange it. And a nurse came to all of our houses to test us. Josie tested positive, Chef Josie, and was in quarantine for 40 days. Wow. And retested positive a second time, which in April of 2020 was considered impossible to
We didn't
to
know what we were
retest.
up against.
We had no idea what we were up against. And in late April, Brenesky passes away at Miami Palmetto. And everything fell apart from there.
And it's important never to forget that, like during the AIDS epidemic, another Republican-controlled Republican-controlled people bungled yet another pandemic. So never ever forget that. They bungled AIDS and they bungled this. So
They didn't take it seriously,
No.
and it was known that this virus was around even before news outlets fully started reporting on it in America. I remember reading about it in 2019, about this weird, strange virus that's going around that nobody
Hearing it
knows
in school.
About. Yep.
Nobody was taking it seriously. And even then, we were in the midst of the pandemic and hundreds of thousands of people were dying. And somehow there were still those few people who were like, what are you talking about? This isn't real. And I don't understand how we're supposed to rely on our government and believe the things our government says when sometimes our government won't even tell us what's actually going on.
They won't acknowledge the truth, and because of that, we have lost so many, and other lives have been impacted by this. And you know what? That needs to stop.
They did that for the AIDS epidemic, and they're doing
Exactly.
it, and they did it now.
Well, I mean, Republicans just ignore things that they don't like. They ignored the HIV/AIDS crisis in the 80s. They, as you noted, they've politicized this to an nth degree. But also, there's gun violence that kills 35,000 Americans roughly every single year. And they do nothing about it. In fact, they promote it. So they are most certainly a culture of death.
Yeah, I want to return to the positive here. This is a milestone for us. I was sitting here thinking as you were going through this and we were watching these clips over the last 25 months, I honestly think I'm probably going through PTSD at this moment. I think I am. And Donald Trump was at the center of this. We reported on it and reported on it and reported on it. Very sad to me that his legacy for me personally, I'm only speaking for myself personally, his legacy is not stained forever over the election and January 6th. His legacy and he, as a human being, is stained forever over COVID-19. He had the ability right from the very beginning to inform, educate, embrace science, and embrace health. And instead, he embraced himself, and literally hundreds of thousands of people died because of it.
And
literally.
it's his fault.
The other thing, however, I do think is really positive is what we've done at Queer News Tonight over the last 25 months. I don't think can be really understood at this moment. It is not until you have the lens of some time and perspective to look at what happened of an LGBT organization, a media organization, being right there in the first days. And it was just happenstance that we launched, It's Happening Out had been going on for a long time, but launched daily evening news that they both simultaneously began at the same time. And we literally, when you go back, one day we'll probably have quite a special on it of the lens of what we were documenting every single day. Because remember all of the crazy things that we were being told, and that masks were bad for us and masks were good for us, and keep cardboard delivery out of your house for 24 hours.
Wash your groceries.
Wash your groceries and leave your shoes outside, you know, and 100 other things. We documented all of it. We reported and discussed all of it. And the most important thing, in closing, before we move on of our pandemic news, is we provided an LGBT perspective of showing that this was dramatically affecting the Florida and the American and worldwide LGBTQ population, not only in catching COVID, but in dying from COVID, and what was happening to our lives in social isolation, in our jobs, in our social lives of LGBT, which was so critically important. I'm very proud of Queer News Tonight and the Happening Out television network. We documented the last 25 months, every step of the way. I hope this is the last we ever talk about COVID-19 and pandemic, and I suspect it won't. I agree that we'll continue to report the important stories. But this chapter of our lives is thankfully coming to an end.
Yes.
But I'm proud of mine and our association of what we have told the LGBTQ community.
Congrats and kudos to you all for that at the Happening Out television network. But I also just want to add one quick thing. The Happening Out television network team will always remember and embrace the memory of anchor Ron Brenesky.
LGBTQ plus news is vital for our community and for the broader world as a whole. We have enough enemies at Fox News. Tucker, Sean, and Laura are loud. We need passionate allies. Happening Out television network, Queer News Tonight, and It's Happening Out are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. Our community needs your support. Like this broadcast and subscribe now to ensure the growth of the entire LGBTQ+